Hello. I wanted to talk to you today about something that is kind of a more nuanced, underappreciated aspect of guitar arranging, not just performance and not just playing, but when it comes to putting guitar in the context of actual music. So that's a big thing, music. So picks. A lot of people don't really seem to think much. I think it's based on articulation and playing style, though you will see so many signature picks and you have to wonder why, like, why would you have a signature pick? And it boils down to quite a few very nuanced characteristics. The size, the shape, the material, the angle, the sharpness of it, and how it's kind of beveled out. It's just, it changes everything, how the string bounces off. And I don't think there is a be-all end-all for picks. I don't think there's one single pick that could ever work for every playing style in every context, because when it comes to arranging guitars, that means using multiple guitars to play multiple parts, to have where the texture and the presentation and the sonority of it is as important, if not more so, than the harmonic content. Because often, you know, a guitar part is quite simple harmonically, but what it does in contrast and how it sounds in the presentation of that is, it's where it's at. So a lot of the time you're hearing guitar and you don't know that you're hearing guitar in a mix. You have no idea, and I like that, and I think that's what makes it such a timeless instrument. But the givens in a good guitar sound are obviously good mics, good room, good preamps, good guitar, and a good player. Ooh, hard. Once you kind of have that, then it just comes down to how do you contrast the instruments, and there's a bunch of different mix techniques, but one of the most basic overlooked ones is for sure the picks, and it's more about what picks work in what context. So I just want to do a couple quick demos, because the way a pick on a guitar sounds is different than the way a pick on another guitar and another mic sounds. And I have two mics set up here. One is the Telefunken U47, and the other one I have is the Royer R122, which is a phantom powered ribbon mic that has a figure 8 polar pattern. So a lot of characteristics to keep in mind here. This mic has a very high SPL handling, almost like a dynamic mic, but it captures more detail and more body of the sound. It has a texture, a very distinct texture and presentation, and initially you'd think, oh, there's a dullness to it, or it just sounds lo-fi or something. The technology itself is very old. It's like a nanometers thick ribbon membrane that's turbo stretched, and it just does its electromechanical thing. Oh my god, my dryer's going. Oh, that's gonna ruin this. I ain't stopping. We're gonna deal with it, and we're gonna hustle. So, getting down to it, the first thing I'm going to test is the U47 with a hard, pointy, sharp pick. This is the Meshuggah signature Jeff Loomis from Dunlop, and this is what it sounds like with the U47. And this is what it sounds like on the Royer. So the things to consider here is this is a very articulate pick. Very quickly, I'm going to play this Ernie Ball. It's a 48mm, super flappy. Totally different pick, soft point. That's on the U47. This is the Royer. So a couple characteristics to keep in mind here. If you're playing strumming, sometimes on a mix, the way it translates, all you're gonna hear is that in a mix and a little bit of harmonic content, but it changes the characteristic of where the guitar sits and what it does. It cuts through almost as a strictly transient attack rhythm instrument. But what you can do with the articulation of a soft pick is completely different than what you can do with a hard pick. Like, this is back to the Jeff Loomis. So cross-picking, alternate picking, for example, for a certain sound. So it works. It works in both contexts, but it's how you would play specifically for the parts. So another aspect and another variable is obviously the tone is totally different as to where you're strumming, and it changes dramatically as to what characteristic is brought out based on the mic that you're using. So if I take this flappy mic and I strum back here on the U47, that has a sound. Now if I do that same thing but on our Royer, there's a sound there, but now I'm going to go back and I'm going to strum it. And then back to here. And then back to the Royer. So this is at the bridge. So, God, there's so many variables, and the fact is, how do you choose one? You pick a starting point, and obviously that's going to be the beginning of the song. You start with something, then you start layering and texturing and trying different voicings and different parts of it, and just see how they contrast. Like you can go back. This is the Ernie Ball Prodigy, and you could just. So what the Royer does is it lets you play a lot more dynamically. The signal to noise ratio is okay, so keep in mind for very, very quiet sources, if you boost the signal, it's going to add a lot of, not a lot, but a bit of noise. And the Telefunken it's magic. It just has a texture to it that really good signal to noise ratio, and it captures kind of the totality of the instrument. But again, where the arranging for guitar comes in is the contrast and the balance. So you could play one part in one voicing a certain way with a certain sound on a certain mic, and then just do the complete opposite. And one technique to sort of extract character is to take something like the Royer, which is a darker mic, and play something really bright in a almost harsh context. So if I were to play near the bridge close up with a really hard pick, but maybe like a soft grip on it, it might just add enough contrast so that you get this variability within complexity, essentially. Like, I mean, if you put A, B, C, and D, you get something that's a blend. So it could be never ending, but that's just kind of a way to get a unique sound. So when you need something that isn't just a basic straight ahead guitar sound, that's kind of what you can do. So a couple other things I'm going to show here are like on the Martin, like it's a very harmonically rich guitar, and there's other pick materials. Like this is just a soft felt thick pick for ukulele, and like it doesn't. It's like, where did my sound go? This is back on the Royer. So it's got a vibe, but it's a little woofy. So you think, well, what would I do if it's so woofy on those low notes? Is there a way that I can, you know, play higher up? So what we're doing there is just something that's more of a textural part, so that's something that you could layer with a normal pick. And then just layer the part like... The way that those would contrast would, you know, with panning and different types of reverb, would totally fill out an entire arrangement. And it just basically takes the fact that if you were to play a hard pick high up aggressively with... it just might not be the sound that you want to achieve in the mix. So you have to think as a guitar player, but as an actual legitimate music arranger, and keep in mind the tonal breadth of the guitar is enormous. It's you can do different tunings, you can have a frequency range that spans the whole gamut of a mix. You can do a single mix with like I don't know, dozens of guitar parts, and it would be a full arrangement that would have the same energy of an orchestra performing. And I mean, that's just kind of the power of this instrument. Once you bring in effects and you just take in all the playing nuance, it has flexibility that is, the possibilities are endless. And, you know, just even thinking with picks, like something that's kind of in between, like this is the Dunlop, it's a 60 mil. Like I can strum with it and I can get that nice kind of like, that nice textured. See, it sounds completely different, but this one will give you a little degree of... See, I can't quite cross pick. I can, but when it comes to playing it in the articulation, it's uncomfortable and it feels like I'm gonna drop the pick. So it's not, it just doesn't feel like ideally suited when you bring it in. To kind of the other variables is like, can I play the part with that instrument? So there's just some ideas and things that you can experiment with just for getting the most out of a guitar when it comes to putting it in the mix. Obviously this has importance when you're just playing, but it is incredibly important when you start recording, because suddenly everything, every detail and every nuance is amplified, and well, you have to think about so many more variables musically about how it contrasts with other parts and other instruments, and how it's voiced. And something as simple as where you pick, as you heard before, where you pick changes the voicing of it. So that's kind of where the center energy of it and all the fundamentals sit. And then where you pick obviously has a totally different effect on what the overtones are going to do. And that's another thing about how all the sounds blend together and what kind of texture they make. So different mics capture different characteristics based on different articulations that enable you to paint with more colors. And that's all it is at the end of the day, is it's finding that contrast, that real musical interesting contrast where it just, I mean, think of it the same way that you would composition, but you think of it in a production sense, is that like you can't just have missing frequencies in the bandwidth if you're trying to present the full energy of a sound. It gets fatiguing if you're isolating stuff too much. So Yeah, I don't know. I think that's about the extent of what I should say on the subject.